All right, welcome everybody to Author Mastery Insights. I am with Dr. Mark Postles, and I always love getting into conversations with this man because he is not only an incredible chiropractor and an amazing human being, he is next level genius and has incredible and a more awesome book. We're going to talk about this today. Dr. Mark, welcome. Always great to connect with you.
Oh, thank you, Marcus. Thanks for having me on. It's always great to connect with you, and thank you so much for the work that you're doing. It's amazing.
I appreciate that, and I'm very excited. Now, I want to talk about this book in particular, and I'm going to, before I ask you a couple of questions about it, I want to say thank you for not just the book, but the innate model that we'll talk about in a moment, and the revisitation of that within the context of this book. However, there is something very unique and special about this book that I immediately want to highlight. And I don't know if you'll be able to see that image on there, everybody. It's got the innate model, but lasting legacy. I want to talk to that principle. And there's a beautiful chart here in the book up there. And what I love about this, and I hope that we get to really just dive into this, Mark, is a lot of practices talk about, we know the importance of marketing. And there is obviously the aspect of selling. And then you've got to have client services, and then you need to make sure you do the right thing and getting clinical outcomes so that your practice can grow. And that model is very simplistic. It's accurate, it's pertinent, it's relevant, yet very simplistic. And when you speak of the voyage, we use different language. Instead of marketing, we look at attraction, and then we talk about nurture, and we talk about deliver, and we talk about expanding. And so I almost look at this as the attractive practice model for chiropractors. We're talking to our profession. To me, it's almost a transformative model because it's no longer about treatment. It's about that voyage and that journey we take them on to expanding their health and their paradigm. And so the very nurturing and relational basis you do this through and with makes chiropractic so much more unique and distinct as a result of it. So I wanted to immediately appreciate you for the way that you've approached chiropractic all of your career, the way that your practice runs and operates and serves people as a vehicle and vessel for health and lifestyle transformation, and the way that you've embodied that within this book. So I just want to acknowledge, recognize, and appreciate that. But having said that, tell me about the book, Mark, from your perspective, not from what I immediately read into it.
Well, that was really great. I mean, we could go home now. That's a beautiful synopsis there, Marcus. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, within all of us, there's wisdom, there's our experience, there's a narrative, there's a book, or two, or three, or four, and so. I went to a book midwife actually when I had the first ideas of conception around the innate model book, and this person advertises herself as such, and that I'll drag a book out of you kicking or screaming, regardless, and it was sort of. It was a cathartic exercise, and I'm sure anyone who's written a book before, if you've really, I mean, ghostwriting and stuff, that's easy, but when you come to sort of examining yourself, it is an introspective process that is revealing, and also healing. So I think that for me was a process. I went through that innate model book, and then based on observation, understanding neurology, there you go, and looking at it from a position of okay, we do tend to filter through our brain, but our mini brains, we have multiple brains in the body and around us. So there's a metaphor based on some degree of science. And it served us really well. It served people really well, and that was since 2011 when it was published. So, developing it for probably 10, 15 years before that. That then obviously led to, well, every business, every relationship, every time people get together, there's a meeting of those phenomena. And so, we started with school teachers and wrote a book on that with Chelsea Horner. That was looking at what happens in the classroom and through into tertiary, and so having had the privilege of being on the New Zealand Chiropractic College board for 20 years, it was an appreciation of that relative to the course structure of the college. It tends to go from philosophy to heavy science to the art and then to the commercialization throughout the 4 years. And of late being in the last 10 years being on the ACC board, similar sort of observation. It's just a logical sequence of activities that human beings do in virtue of getting an idea about something, finding out the details about it, applying those details into a real life activity and creating something with it, and then breaking them all down and putting them together in a new way and reinventing, and then that gives new ideas. So, that cycle, whether it's tying your shoelaces or going to the shops to get a loaf of bread or planning a trip or running a practice, there's similar structure. The structure is the same. Outcomes, obviously, and the content is different. So obviously, as we developed the Quest chiropractic coaching program over time, I've had the privilege of serving thousands of chiros and their teams throughout the world in the last 30 years. So that's been helped to compile an observation of flow, and we actually had bought into a software company, did our midlife crisis after 14 years, and went to the States, bought a software company in 1989 when no one knew what software was, or very few people, just a few nerds. And we thought this is the bee's knees, and we'll put a chiropractic program together, which we did. But it involved me going into lots of offices and doing flow analysis and seeing how particles flow, and both neurological particles, physical particles, animate and inanimate. And so that was it kept falling into four phenomena. And as we look back through all the different personality profilings over the years, right back to Plato and Aristotle, there's groups of four, groups of four, groups of four. So there's a pretty solid basis for these functions. So when it comes to the practice, then this is just a model, and models aren't real. Models are metaphors. So you can't eat the menu at the restaurant. It's just the model of the food. Sometimes it has photos on it, but other times it just gives you the taste for it. So that's the nature of this. So we spent a number of years sort of analyzing what we're doing step by step, and what the person's journey is through the practice, and through their life, and through their engagement with chiropractic. So the chiropractic principles are so valid when it comes to this intrinsic wisdom that the human body has and the way it rolls. And so there was no conflict there. It was really, really cool. We look at way many businesses that are, sometimes very successful, but they're pushing it. They're using energy to drive it. They're having to do heaps of marketing and advertising because the back door is just constantly revolving, and that's like the struggle there. And there's when you bring in different levels of attraction into the practice or the business, things start to change, and a momentum starts to gather there where the people drive the business. So there's an intrinsic and extrinsic component to that, where attraction attracts more of the same vibration, the same phenomenon. So that's where this book sort of started to take form. So okay, let's just look at the model we used with the innate model for one individual, and now we'll look at on with a corporate overtone. So that's it's really simple, really very, very simple. That we remain attractive to a person, and that person will stick. They just like it. It just feels like home, and their kids will come in there, and it'll become multi-generational. I mean, I've come out for 50 years in practice, and it's still, there's third generations coming in that have been in the practice or in chiropractic throughout that time. So there's, looking at those people, interviewing them, just finding out what sticks for them was a really a big eye opener. And, you know, it's not necessarily about all the things chiropractors think it's about, you know, the technique and even the philosophy, you know, that, you know, we want to sort of impart our belief system on others, and it's not on, you know, it's like everyone has their own belief structure. And if the environment drives them, so create an epigenetic environment, and there will be a shift in a person's beliefs. But it's not about us changing them. It's about us doing our thing really extremely well. And so we remain attractive, and that not only draws people in, but causes them to stay. So there's no need for conversion. It's an automatic process. You know, if we go into a you know, we're dressed in the office, say we're in a downtown office, and we're all dressed up in our best gear, and then we go to, well, let's use Melbourne for example, go to the MCG for our favourite tribes encounter, and we change our persona, we change our physiology based on the energy of the MCG. You know, we might then go up the road to the cathedral, and immediately we will shift our football persona into one that's more appropriate for that environment. So, you know, if we create the environment or for as long as we create the environment, and for as long as the environment resonates with the person, then that becomes the draw. And so within that, then there's, you know, we would see that people are either working their way into or out of our practice at all times, and they've always got the radar on for safety and for congruence. So, you know, one or two little slips, and we see it as a bank account of trust. One or two little slips is going to start that person moving out rather than moving in. But one or two inspirational pieces, some hope, some vision, some direction, and that person moves in again. So, you know, it's a constant dance within that. And, you know, chiros are the same, CAs are the same. You know, there's this dynamic there. It's a vitalistic system at play. It's a living organism. So, and when we start to force it, it's like, you know, calling in Monsanto to throw chemicals over the crops, you know, is trying to make it happen. And that's not on. Well, I mean, it's not on from a chiropractic viewpoint, but there's lots of aspects to that as we go from the attraction of people in, then the nurture is critical. And nurture is about the order and structure, procedures, policies, making sure that there are no surprises at this level. We want to have surprises at other levels, by the way. But anyway, you know, there's no huge disruption that isn't planned, put it that way. And so that's what, you know, impeccable procedures and policy manuals are really important for people, so that can all be running underneath, and then we can goof off on the surface. You know, so it allows chaos so-called chaos to be expressed on the day-to-day visits. You know, 20 or 30 people in the office at the same time, and kids everywhere. But underneath there's order, there's structure, which gives predictability to the team, and they can roll out their best work because it's being supported by that. So from that position, from that left base of the brain position, then we say, look, okay, what's possible here in terms of our delivery? So, you know, we want to make sure that the strategies that we create in the nurture area go through into our delivery, so we can create some longer term plans, some tactics, things that will roll in when the situation is appropriate, and certain scripts or you know, expressions, or maybe gifts or exercises or challenges or whatever it is, can be thrown in there at the time that's appropriate, rather than in a, you know, visit 1 we do this, visit 3 we do this, visit 18 we do this, and visit 125 we do that, you know. So so that's it's a mechanistic approach to it. So we want to have the order and the structure there, and then the intelligence of the practice brings it to the surface when needed. And so, you know, part of that then is a choice of associates, and you know, we stay down the path of multiple practices, and got to 3 practices and said, no, this is insane. And, you know, I know that the scale, we work with practices that, you know, from up to 20 practices, 25 practices. You've got, there's a certain metric there where once you get over about 12, then it starts to become a bit easier because, you know, there's more of those systems in place, you know, CA trainers and accountants and managers and so forth. So anyway, at that point in time, we said, no, we're going to do a centralized model. So, you know, currently we have 6 chiros in one location, and, you know, right, the difference between having 6 under one roof and 6 practices is huge. You know, in terms of management and structure, and also the cohesion of the group, because the delivery system is a combination of people who are doing their best work alongside others that would then allow the whole to function really well. So they're like the organs of the body, they're all different, and, you know, to try and to have set systems and make mini me's out of even half a dozen people is a very demeaning task, really, because it doesn't recognize the innate expression of the individual. So, you know, once again, there's lots of you know, sort of conflicts here, or apparent conflicts, but when an organized system is working, when you know, a living system is working, there's complementary and oppositional elements working at the same time. And so this is where the delivery mechanism can be, think of like a department store. You know, you'll have different high-level name brands all taking up their little, you know, 20 square meters in Myers or David Jones or whatever it is. So, you know, that, and they're different price points, different approaches, different ways of doing it. But we've found that blend for model doctor practices is a really nice blend, because people have a lot more choice and people do move between chiros. So that then enhances the essence that, you know, that what we're there for is that person's evolution, and we relate to it as an ascendancy. They're ascending themselves, and we're there to be facilitators of that. And people will go from one chiro to another rather than leave and go to another, you know, another discipline maybe down the road. So that then leads it into how can we improve and how can we expand? And that's the left frontal part of the brain, which loves, you know, breaking things down, tearing them apart, putting them together in different ways. They're the ADHD kids, you know, that, you know, will pull legs off flies and wings off birds and whatever they do, you know. So, yeah, always counter positioning to the current narrative. So, and it's important for us to do that as individuals. And as chiropractors, you know, we've had tens of thousands of people do the innate model quiz, and majority of chiros don't venture into that quadrant 4 part. They're not looking, they don't go oppositional, they don't, they're not really bottom line oriented either, by the way. There's a tendency for chiros to pull back into the deliver area, which is their safety zone, and where they do their best work. So it's not about them necessarily doing that, but it's about having the office or the practice doing that. So that's part of that expansion, which, as you mentioned, does end with the legacy, which, you know, we know that it's there, and we won't be able to measure the extent of it in our lifetime, and we see evidence of it along the way. So that's sort of the circle. Every time we recreate something, we're going to set up new ideas, so that cycle keeps going from the idea to the substantiation of the substance of it, and reference to the past to make sure, you know, it's not too dangerous, and you know, we've done it before and has it worked, and then across into the deliver, and then back up to a new idea again. So we encourage that as and as part of the book is dedicated to that. There's actually an addendum to the book coming out too on the associate driven practice, which it focuses just on that aspect as well. Anyway, so that's sort of it in a nutshell. Get the book.
All right, let me see if I've got this right. Firstly, we started with the innate model, which is something you know, 2011, you said you brought that, and you've worked, you know, I've seen you present on that. I've read your book. I've done the quiz, and it's a profound insight into your own it's a very self-reflective, but it's also useful to create a sense of understanding of how you can go out into the world. So you've taken the innate model, applied it to a chiropractic practice, and ensured that we've got a model for how that allows us within our practice to be both legacy minded and impactful at the same time. And when you look at the first aspect of the model is attraction, which is, again, it could be referred to as marketing, but you're even putting it in a different context of the energy you hold, the way that you mirror out into the world and what comes into you from that energetic level, so that when you move into that next stage of that nurturing element, there is already a relationship established. And then you put systems in place with your training manuals. You also put processes in place that is reflected in the care that you have, so that you engage in a way that the attraction means a retention through the nurturing, because the engagement creates a relationship and establishes that bonding connection. And then when you deliver the care with a long-lasting process, it moves out of that mechanistic of the number of visits you see them for and what happens on each visit, deepening the connection and realizing that it is a journey, and the delivery takes them from where they are to where they ideally want to be, and is transformative till you expand out into not only the practice fulfilling its potential, the people coming into your practices realizing that potential along this journey, which is where it becomes a legacy-minded outcome from you impacting at the highest and profound, most possible level, changing lives, but changing families, and then changing communities, and expanding the practice to realize its fullest and most complete potential. Because the attractive practice model isn't only about building a practice or seeing more people coming into your practice. It's about how attracting more people to see them in a way that sustains the relationship, engages them in a journey that fulfills the mission of chiropractic in their lives, and therefore fulfills the mission of a chiropractic practice to be transformed within its community and to serve the entire profession. Is that a reasonable way of summarizing my understanding of what you've just said?
It's amazing. Yeah, yeah, it is. I think probably one little distinction I make on that one would be that the purpose is very selfish, right? And I can recall when I first heard about chiropractic, I was, ran into a couple of guys in Vancouver, Canada, and we went for a few drinks, and they told me about this thing called chiropractic, and I hadn't heard of it before. But by the time I'd finished that little evening in Gassy Jacks in Gastown, it's like, okay, I'm going to do it. This is incredible. I would feel so good in being able to put my hands on people and have things change. And they just, they were students. They were just telling me, very enthusiastically, note students, enthusiasm, really, really key. But anyway, they were telling me with, with their heart on their sleeve. It's just like, this is amazing. I got it. I just got it. And so for me, it was a life's journey that was selfish. It's like, I want to feel good, and I can see myself, I can sense myself feeling good by doing this thing called chiropractic. I'd never been adjusted when I got to college. I traveled around the world to get there, working in the mines and to get the money and all the rest of it, going to the States, and most of the time working illegally. But anyway, that was, but it was driven by that. I got adjusted when I got to Palmer College, and so it wasn't about the adjustment. It was about the resonance that it has for me, and obviously we're all different, but I would say that the Hyde Park in London sort of comes to mind on this one. But you go out there on a Sunday afternoon, and there's every man and their dog standing on their soapbox, shouting their particular faith or belief, or or concern for humanity, and people gather around. I mean, many people are sort of speaking from the soapbox with just gibberish. There's no discernible words there, but they're so enthusiastic about it, and they're so turned on that people will give up for their Sunday morning to go and just suck in the energy of it. And so I think coming from that position that when we serve ourselves, and we're there not to see people, we're there to serve people, we're there to serve, that's secondary to serving ourselves. Right? And it's not serving ourselves with all the money and all that sort of stuff. It comes. We'll make millions upon millions upon millions of dollars in our working lifetime as a chiro, and it's within us, and so it then emanates. And that's the attractive factor. I think that, you know, if we can support our team that way, if we can support the chiros that we have working with us, and then at the same time, it flows over into our practice members, that becomes a very strong force. And, you know, so we've had well over 100 people go to chiropractic colleges through our practice, you know, and you know, planting the seed, contribution, I think is an important part of legacy, you know, so that not just having impact. Impact is just, you know, a bit of a thrill. You know, it's oh wow, this is really cool. We've, you know, served this many people in our society, but having contribution that is meaningful, that changes structures and systems. And, you know, two of my mentors, and Bruce Lipton, he put the forward into the innate model, and Guy Rickman, who put the forward into the attractive practice model, exemplified this for me in terms of the legacies that they're leaving, and then our responsibility is to take those on board if we choose, and if it feels right, and then to allow that to take us to the next level. And so I think, you know, we when we enter that quadrant 4 part, and that's, as I said, a lot of chiros don't do that very actively. You know, I'd encourage them to think about that. You know, how can you help move the profession forward? And you know, we're in a difficult place too. Just I think, you know, we're sort of playing in a playground that's not really ours. It's way too small, and it's way too confined. It's got far too many walls and barbed wire around it. And you know, that's called healthcare. And you know, it's like, it's so not, chiropractic is so not healthcare. It's a human potential movement. It's way beyond healthcare. And so, you know, we use that as an excuse, but really, you know, we're not there playing at that low level model, which is a very reductionistic model. So yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but let's, I mean, within each of us, we do extend it. And this, you know, what you do on a regular basis, you know, you're way beyond having people on the table that's behind you. You know, it's like your input on this one is going to be having ripples that go all around the world and cause many people to seek out tables like you've got there. So, you know.
Well, before we wrap up here, really, there's some, I just, in what you said, highlighted this. There are so many people have such a profound opportunity to serve and impact through the gifts of chiropractic. And, you know, you have, it's not just writing books, and, you know, you've done more than that. It's an astounding job. You, with Quest coaching and the lectures you've done and the practices that you've built, you've had such a servant heart and a servant mindset, and have been so profoundly your impact on the chiropractic profession. This really highlights that anybody can, when they claim their power and they come from that place of servant-heartedness, can go out into the world and make a transformative element. And I think I just want to acknowledge and appreciate you, because you have been so inspiring to me over the years. We've had some great conversations. Still remember over in America sitting down there while our wives went off and had their conversations, and some wonderful moments of deep philosophy and some introspection. And so you've brought this into so many people's lives. So I want to just acknowledge and appreciate you for that, for me, for my life, for the impact you've had within the profession. And now through the attractive practice model, chiropractors have the opportunity to again look into the mind of an incredible thought leader of chiropractic, take that genius into their practice so they can be more influential and more impactful. The link is below. Please grab one of these books so that you can continue to expand your influence and impact. Dr. Mark, is there anything that you have as a message before we wrap up here? So again, just adding wisdom and insight that you always share as we close this conversation.
I would just share that the notion that we are enough, you know, that we have enough, we are enough just as we are, that there's nothing to change, that we are complete and whole, and that if we trust the flow of life, it will direct us and guide us, and we will make value out of every situation that comes up. So there's no lack, there's abundance, and if we flow with that, it's a pretty good ride.
Absolutely is. Mark Postles, thank you so much for your time. Everyone, grab your copies, and we'll see you on the next edition of Author Mastery Insights. Thank you.